The ultimatum hit Ethan like a freight train. Choose an alpha by his 22nd birthday, or his family would choose for him. 21 years and 11 months. He was running out of time, and the idea of being shackled to some domineering stranger made his skin crawl. Ethan stood in the middle of his family's sprawling vineyard in Napa Valley, the air thick with the scent of ripe grapes and the weight of tradition. The Callaway family wasn't just wealthy, they were a dynasty. One of the last great Alpha Omega clans in California, bound by rules older than the Redwoods. As an Omega, Ethan's role was clear: bond with an Alpha, secure the family's legacy, and keep the bloodline strong. But Ethan had a secret, one that could unravel everything. He was in love with Caleb, a beta with no status, no lineage, and no chance of being accepted by his family. Caleb was everything the Callaway Alphas weren't: gentle, unassuming, with a laugh that could light up the darkest corners of Ethan's heart. They'd met 2 years ago at a community college art class, where Caleb's sketches of the coastline had caught Ethan's eye. What started as shared glances over charcoal pencils turned into late-night talks, stolen kisses behind the vineyard's barn, and a love that felt like rebellion. But now, with Ethan's birthday looming, their secret was a ticking time bomb. "Ethan, you can't keep dodging this," his mother, Evelyn, said that morning, her voice sharp as she poured coffee in the sunlit kitchen. "The family council meets in a month. If you don't choose, they'll pair you with Marcus Reed." Marcus, the arrogant alpha from a neighboring estate, had been circling Ethan like a vulture, his smug grin promising a life of control, not love. "I'd rather die," Ethan muttered, gripping his mug so tightly his knuckles whitened. "Then decide," Evelyn snapped, her eyes softening for a moment. "I know you think we're cruel, but this is about survival. Our kind thrives on order, not chaos." Ethan didn't argue. He'd heard it all before: the lectures about duty, the warnings about betas being unstable matches for omegas. But as he slipped out of the house and headed to the vineyard's edge, where Caleb was waiting, he felt the chaos in his chest bloom into something alive, something worth fighting for. Caleb leaned against an old oak, his leather jacket scuffed from years of wear. His sandy blonde hair caught the sunlight, and when he saw Ethan, his face broke into a grin that made Ethan's heart stutter. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders," Caleb said, pushing off the tree. "Close enough," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He wanted to tell Caleb everything: the ultimatum, the council, Marcus, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he stepped closer, letting Caleb's warmth anchor him. "I just need you right now." Caleb's grin faded, replaced by a quiet intensity. He reached out, brushing a lock of Ethan's dark hair from his forehead. "I'm here," he said simply, but the weight of those words felt like a vow. They sat under the oak, the vineyard sprawling around them, and for a moment, the world was just the two of them. Ethan traced the lines of Caleb's hand, memorizing the calluses from his part-time job at the auto shop. "What if I don't choose?" Ethan asked, his voice breaking. "What if I just run?" Caleb's eyes darkened. "You know they'd find you. Your family's got more reach than God in this state." He paused, then added, "But if you wanted to run, I'd go with you. Anywhere." The offer hung between them, reckless and impossible. Ethan wanted to say yes, to grab Caleb's hand and flee to some nowhere town where no one knew the Callaway name. But the vineyard, the family, the legacy was a cage he couldn't just walk away from. Not yet. That night, at a lavish dinner hosted by the Callaways, Marcus Reed made his move. The dining hall was a sea of crystal and candlelight, the air thick with the scent of rosemary and ambition. Marcus, all sharp jawline and tailored suit, cornered Ethan by the fireplace. You're running out of time. Calloway, he said, his voice low and smug. I'd hate for you to be forced into something unpleasant. Ethan's stomach churned. I'm not your prize. Marcus. Marcus leaned closer, his alpha pheromones sharp and overwhelming. You will be, he said, his smile predatory. Your family's already warming to the idea. Ethan fled to the balcony, his chest tight with panic. Caleb found him there, his presence a bomb against the chaos. He's not wrong, Ethan admitted, his voice raw. They're going to force this if I don't act. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. Then let's give them something to talk about, he said, and before Ethan could protest, Caleb pulled him into a kiss fierce, desperate, and utterly defiant. The world fell away, leaving only the heat of Caleb's lips, the strength of his arms, and the promise of a fight they couldn't avoid. As they pulled apart, Ethan's heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope. He didn't have a plan, but he had Caleb. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The kiss on the balcony lingered in Ethan's mind like a fever dream, but reality crashed in the next morning. His father, Richard Calloway, summoned him to the study, a room of dark wood and heavier expectations. You've been reckless, Richard said, his voice like gravel. People saw you with that beta last night. Do you have any idea what you're risking? Ethan's pulse spiked, but he held his ground. I'm not a chess piece, Dad. I get to choose who I love. Richard's eyes narrowed. Love doesn't secure alliances or protect our name. Marcus Reed does. You're meeting him today for lunch. End of discussion. The lunch was torture. Marcus sat across from Ethan at a chic Napa bistro, his charm as polished as his cufflinks. You're fighting a losing battle, Ethan, he said, slicing into his steak. Your family needs strength, not some starry-eyed fling with a nobody. Ethan's fork froze midair. Caleb's not a nobody, he snapped, his voice louder than intended. Heads turned, and Marcus's smile tightened. Careful, Marcus warned. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. Ethan left the bistro in a haze of anger, heading straight for Caleb's apartment in town. It was a cramped, one-bedroom place above the auto shop, filled with sketchbooks and the faint smell of motor oil. Caleb was there, hunched over a drawing of the vineyard, his hands smudged with charcoal. You okay? Caleb asked, standing as Ethan burst in. No, Ethan said, pacing. They're pushing Marcus on me, and two can't breathe. Caleb, I can't lose you. Caleb crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling Ethan into his arms. You won't, he said fiercely. We'll figure this out. Together. They spent the afternoon planning, tossing around wild ideas, leaving Napa, confronting the council, even faking a bond with another alpha to buy time. But every plan felt like a trap. The Calloways had eyes everywhere, and Ethan's inheritance, his future, was tied to their approval. That evening, they drove to the coast, the Pacific stretching out like a promise of freedom. They parked near a cliff, the wind whipping through their hair as they sat on the hood of Caleb's beat-up truck. I used to come here as a kid, Ethan said, staring at the waves. Thought I could escape everything if I just kept driving. Caleb's hand found his, their fingers interlocking. You still can, he said softly. But you'd be giving up everything you've got here. Your family, the vineyard. You're worth more than all of it. Ethan interrupted, his voice raw. He leaned into Caleb, their foreheads touching, and for a moment, the world was quiet. But the quiet didn't last. The next day, Ethan's sister, Lila, cornered him in the vineyard's tasting room. I saw you leave with him, she said, her voice low but urgent. Ethan, you're playing with fire. Marcus knows about Caleb, and he's not happy. Let him be pissed. Ethan shot back, but fear coiled in his gut. Marcus wasn't just an alpha, he was ruthless, with connections that could ruin Caleb's life. Lila grabbed his arm. You think this is just about you? If you keep this up, they'll destroy him to get to you. The warning hit hard. That night, Ethan met Caleb at their oak tree, the moonlight casting shadows across his face. I can't let them hurt you, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Maybe we need to stop. Caleb's face fell, but he didn't flinch. You don't mean that, he said, stepping closer. You're scared, and I get it. But don't push me away. Not now. Ethan's resolve cracked. He kissed Caleb, hard and desperate, pouring every ounce of his fear and love into it. When they pulled apart, Caleb's eyes were fierce. We're not giving up, he said. We'll find a way. But the next morning, disaster struck. Ethan woke to a text from an unknown number, a photo of him and Caleb kissing by the oak, with a single line, choose wisely, or he pays the price. The photo burned into Ethan's mind, each pixel a threat. Someone was watching, and they wanted him to know it. He showed the text to Caleb at the auto shop, his hands trembling. Caleb's jaw tightened as he studied the image. Marcus, he said, his voice low and dangerous. This has his name all over it. We don't know that, Ethan said, but the lie tasted bitter. Marcus's smug face flashed in his mind, and he knew Caleb was right. They decided to confront the threat head-on. Caleb drove them to Marcus's estate, a sleek modern mansion that screamed new money. Marcus greeted them at the door, his smile all teeth. Didn't expect a visit from the lovebirds, he said, leaning against the frame. What's this about? Ethan held up his phone, the photo glaring. This stops now, he said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. Marcus's smile didn't falter. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his eyes gleamed with amusement. Though I'd be careful, Ethan. Betas don't fare well when they cross alphas. Caleb stepped forward, his fists clenched. Threaten him again, and you'll regret it. Marcus laughed, unfazed. You're out of your league, grease monkey. Ethan's mine, whether he likes it or not. The drive back was silent, Ethan's mind racing. He couldn't let Marcus hurt Caleb, but every move felt like a step toward a trap. At Caleb's apartment, they sat on the couch, the weight of the threat pressing down on them. I can handle Marcus, Caleb said, his voice firm. But you need to decide what you're willing to risk. Ethan, I'll fight for you, but I can't do this alone. Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to promise Caleb everything. But the photo, the ultimatum, the family was too much. I need time, he whispered. Caleb nodded, but the hurt in his eyes cut deeper than any words. Take it, he said, but don't shut me out. The next few days were a blur. Ethan avoided Marcus, dodged his family's questions, and clung to stolen moments with Caleb. They met at a diner, park, anywhere they could steal a few minutes without prying eyes. Each touch, each whispered word, felt like a defiance of the world closing in. But the world fought back. At a family council meeting, Ethan's uncle, a stern alpha named Victor, laid out the stakes. Marcus has offered a merger, he said, his voice booming. His family's resources, combined with ours, will secure the Calloway legacy for generations. Refuse, and we risk losing everything. Ethan's mother shot him a pleading look. "This isn't just about you," she said. "Think of Lila, of your cousins. We're counting on you." The pressure was suffocating. That night, Ethan slipped away to the cliff where he and Caleb had parked before. Caleb was already there, his truck a familiar anchor in the dark. "I can't keep doing this," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "They're going to take everything from me if I don't choose." Caleb's face was unreadable. "And what about us?" he asked. "Are you giving up on that, too?" Ethan wanted to scream, to cry, to run. Instead, he kissed Caleb, slow and deliberate, letting the world fade away. "I'm not giving up," he said. "But I need a plan." They spent hours brainstorming, the ocean roaring below. Caleb suggested going public, telling the world about their love before Marcus or the family could spin the narrative. It was risky, but it could force the Callaways to back off. Ethan agreed, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. But as they drove back to town, headlights flashed in the rearview mirror. A black SUV followed too closely, his presence a silent threat. Caleb's grip on the wheel tightened. "Hold on," he said, and floored the gas. The SUV's headlights burned into the back of Caleb's truck, a predator stalking its prey. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs as Caleb swerved through Napa's winding roads, the engine roaring. "Marcus?" Ethan asked, his voice tight. "Or someone he hired," Caleb said, his eyes flicking to the mirror. He took a sharp turn, tires screeching, and the SUV followed. "We need to lose them." They sped toward town, weaving through quiet streets until Caleb pulled into an alley behind the auto shop. The SUV roared past, and for a moment, they were safe. Ethan's hands shook as he grabbed Caleb's arm. "This is getting out of control." Caleb's face was grim. "We need to end this, Ethan. No more running." They spent the night in Caleb's apartment, the air thick with tension. Ethan couldn't sleep, his mind replaying the chase, the photo, Marcus's smirk. By morning, they had a plan: go public at the Vineyard's annual gala, a high-profile event attended by Napa's elite. If they declared their love there, Marcus and the family would have to face them head-on. The gala was a glittering affair, the Vineyard's grand hall filled with chandeliers and power plays. Ethan wore a tailored suit, his nerves masked by a forced smile. Caleb, in a borrowed jacket, looked out of place but stood tall, his hand brushing Ethan's for courage. As the night wore on, Ethan's father took the stage, announcing the family's plans for expansion. Ethan saw his chance. Heart pounding, he stepped forward, pulling Caleb with him. "I have something to say," he called out, his voice carrying over the crowd. The room fell silent. Ethan's mother froze, her eyes wide. Marcus, standing nearby, narrowed his gaze. "I'm not choosing an alpha," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I've already chosen. Caleb is my partner, and I love him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Caleb squeezed his hand, his expression fierce with pride. But before Ethan could say more, Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "This is a mistake, Callaway," he said. "You're throwing away your future for a beta." The word stung, but Ethan didn't flinch. "My future's mine to decide," he shot back. "Not yours. Not my family's." Richard stormed over, his face red with anger. "This is not the time or place," he hissed, grabbing Ethan's arm. But Caleb stepped between them, his stance protective. "Let him speak," Caleb said, his voice low but commanding. For a moment, Richard hesitated, and Ethan saw a crack in his father's resolve. The night ended in chaos. Guests whispered, Marcus fumed, and Ethan's family dragged him into a private room. "You've humiliated us," Evelyn said, tears in her eyes. "Do you know what this means?" "It means I'm done lying," Ethan said, his voice raw. "I love him, Mom, and I'm not sorry." Caleb waited outside, his presence a lifeline. They left the gala together, the weight of their defiance heavy but liberating. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, Ethan's phone buzzed with a new text, another photo, this time of Caleb alone at the auto shop, with the words, "Last warning." Ethan's blood ran cold. He showed Caleb, who cursed under his breath. "We need help," Caleb said. "Someone your family respects, who can make them listen." They turned to Lila, Ethan's sister, who'd been quietly supportive. She agreed to mediate, arranging a meeting with the family council. But as the meeting loomed, Ethan felt the walls closing in. Marcus was still out there, and the SUV's headlights haunted his dreams. The council meeting was a battlefield, and Ethan felt like he was walking into it unarmed. The Callaway Estates conference room was lined with stern-faced uncles, aunts, and distant cousins, all alphas or bonded omegas, staring him down. Lila stood by his side, her presence a small comfort. Caleb waited outside, barred from the room by tradition. Ethan's voice shook as he spoke. "I'm not bonding with Marcus," he said. "I choose Caleb. He's my partner, and I'm asking you to respect that." Victor, the council's head, leaned forward, his eyes cold. "You're asking us to throw away centuries of tradition for a beta," he said. "You're a Callaway, Ethan. Act like one." "I am," Ethan shot back. "I'm fighting for what I believe in, just like you taught me." The room erupted in arguments, voices overlapping. Lila stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Ethan's not asking to destroy the family," she said. "He's asking for a chance to live his truth. Isn't that what we stand for?" Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Ethan saw doubt in his mother's eyes. But Victor wasn't swayed. "We'll vote," he said. "If the council rejects your choice, you'll bond with Marcus. No exceptions." Ethan left the room drained, finding Caleb outside. "They're voting," he said, his voice hollow. "If they say no, it's over." Caleb pulled him close, his arms a shield. "Then we fight harder," he said. "We don't give up." The vote was delayed, giving Ethan and Caleb a sliver of time. They used it to rally support, reaching out to younger family members and allies in the community. Lila helped, quietly spreading the word about Ethan's stand. They even posted on social media, a risky move that sparked a wave of support online. Let Ethan Choose trended locally, and strangers began sharing stories of their own forbidden loves. But Marcus wasn't idle. He cornered Ethan at a local cafe, his presence suffocating. "You think a hashtag will save you?" he sneered. "I've already got half the council in my pocket." Ethan's hands clenched. "Why do you even want this? You don't love me." Marcus's smile was cold. "Love's got nothing to do with it. You're a Callaway. That's power. And I want it." The encounter left Ethan shaken, but it fueled his resolve. He and Caleb doubled down, meeting with allies, planning a public appeal at the council's next session. They spent nights at the cliff, their sanctuary, talking about a future they might never have. One night, as the stars glittered above, Caleb took Ethan's hand. "No matter what happens," he said, "I'm proud of you. You're braver than you know." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm scared," he admitted. "But you make me want to keep fighting." They kissed, the ocean's roar drowning out the world. But as they drove back, the SUV appeared again, tailing them. This time, Caleb didn't run. He pulled over, stepped out, and faced the driver, a hired thug. Not Marcus. Tell your boss to back off. Caleb growled, his voice steady. The thug smirked but drove away. Ethan's heart pounded as he grabbed Caleb's hand. You're crazy, he said, half laughing, half crying. Crazy for you, Caleb replied, and they laughed. The sound a small victory in the dark. The council's final vote loomed like a storm cloud, and Ethan felt the weight of it in every breath. He and Caleb spent every moment preparing. Their love a quiet rebellion against the odds. They met with allies at a community center, where supporters omegas, betas, even a few alphas rallied around them. A young omega named Sarah shared her story of being forced into a bond, her voice breaking as she spoke. You're giving us hope, she told Ethan, her eyes shining. Don't stop. The support was a lifeline, but Marcus was relentless. He leaked rumors to the local press, painting Caleb as a troublemaker and Ethan as a reckless child. The stories stung, but they also backfired, drawing more attention to Ethan's cause. Social media buzzed with "Let Ethan choose," and strangers showed up at the vineyard with signs of support. The night before the vote, Ethan and Caleb sat under their oak tree, the air cool and heavy with possibility. What if we lose? Ethan asked, his voice small. Caleb's hand found his, steady and warm. Then we keep fighting, he said. We'll find a way, Ethan. I promise. The council meeting was packed, the room electric with tension. Ethan stood before the family, Caleb at his side despite protests. I'm not here to beg, Ethan said, his voice clear. I'm here to tell you who I am. I love Caleb, and I choose him. If you can't accept that, you're not protecting the family, tearing it apart. Lila spoke next, her words measured but powerful. Ethan's not breaking tradition, she said. He's showing us it can evolve. Let him choose, or you'll lose him. The room was silent as the council voted. Ethan's heart pounded, his hand gripping Caleb's. When Victor announced the result, his voice was grim. The council has decided. Ethan, your choice is rejected. The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan's mother gasped, and Lila's face fell. Marcus smirked from the corner, his victory assured. But Caleb didn't let go. This isn't over, he whispered. That night, Ethan's world unraveled. His father cut him off from the family fortune, and Marcus's threats escalated a brick through Caleb's apartment window. With a note, leave, or else. Ethan's resolve wavered, the cost of his defiance crushing him. But Caleb refused to break. He took Ethan to the cliff, their sanctuary, and pulled him close. They can take everything, he said, his voice fierce. But they can't take us. Ethan's tears fell, but he nodded. I'm done running, he said. Let's fight. They hatched a final plan. Leave Napa. Start fresh somewhere new. It meant giving up the vineyard, the legacy, everything Ethan had known. But as he looked at Caleb, he knew it was worth it. Leaving wasn't as simple as packing a bag. Ethan's life was tangled in the vineyard's roots, and cutting those ties felt like losing a piece of himself. He and Caleb spent days planning their escape, pooling their savings and mapping out a route to Oregon, where a friend offered a place to crash. But the vineyard wasn't just a place, it was Ethan's home, his history. He wandered its rows one last time, the grapes heavy with memories. Lila found him there, her face streaked with tears. I tried, she said. I thought they'd listen. Ethan hugged her, his throat tight. You did more than anyone, he said. Come with us. She shook her head. I can't. but I'll keep fighting for you here. The night they planned to leave, Marcus made his final move. Ethan and Caleb were loading Caleb's truck when two men appeared from the shadows, their faces hard. Marcus says you're done. One growled, raising a bat. Caleb pushed Ethan behind him, his stance defiant. You'll have to go through me, he said. The fight was brutal but brief. Caleb took a hit to the shoulder but held his ground, disarming one thug with a wrench from his truck. Ethan tackled the other, his adrenaline surging. They drove the men off, but Caleb was bleeding, his face pale. We need to go now, Ethan said, helping Caleb into the truck. They sped toward the coast, the vineyard fading in the rearview mirror. At a gas station, Ethan bandaged Caleb's wounds, his hands shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered. This is my fault. Caleb grabbed his hand, his grip strong despite the pain. It's our fault, he said. And I'd do it all again. They reached Oregon by dawn, the friends' cabin a small haven in the woods. As they settled in, Ethan felt the weight of their choice. He'd lost his family, his home, but he'd gained something greater, freedom. And Caleb, they spent days healing, talking, dreaming of a new life. Caleb sketched the forest. Ethan wrote poetry. And slowly, they built something new. The threats stopped. The SUV vanished. And word came from Lila. Marcus had backed off, his reputation tarnished by the public backlash. Ethan's mother reached out, her letter tentative but kind. I don't understand, she wrote, but I want to try. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The Oregon cabin became their sanctuary, a place where Ethan and Caleb could finally breathe. The forest whispered around them, a stark contrast to Napa's manicured rose. They built a life, piece by piece. Caleb got a job at a local garage, his hands steady with tools. Ethan started writing, his words pouring out in a blog that gained a small but loyal following. They were poor, but they were free, and every night, they fell asleep tangled together, the world outside irrelevant. One evening, as they sat on the cabin's porch, Caleb pulled out his sketchbook. I drew us, he said, showing Ethan a sketch of them on the cliff. Hands clasped, the ocean vast behind them. This is who we are. Ethan's eyes stung. It's perfect, he said, kissing Caleb softly. The sketch captured their love, their fight, their victory. Months later, Lila visited, bringing news. The council was softening, influenced by the public support and Lila's relentless advocacy. They're talking about revising the rules, she said. You might be able to come home. Ethan looked at Caleb, their hands intertwined. We are home, he said, and Caleb's smile was brighter than the sunset. They returned to Napa for a visit, not as prodigals but as equals. Ethan's mother hugged him, tears in her eyes. I was wrong, she whispered. I'm proud of you. The vineyard felt different now, less a cage and more a memory. Ethan and Caleb walked its rows, their love no longer a secret. Marcus had faded into irrelevance, his power broken by their defiance. As they stood under their oak tree, Ethan took Caleb's hand. I chose you, he said, and I choose you again, every time. Caleb kissed him, the world falling away. Good, he said, because you're stuck with me. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, fierce, flawed, and fiercely human. And as the sun set over the vineyard, Ethan knew they'd won something greater than any legacy. Each other. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.